Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, thank you. Yeah. So what's new? All right. Good evening, everyone. The White House Correspondents Association dinner erupted in chaos after a crazed gunman rushed to the security checkpoint and opened fire. The man was immediately grabbed, tackled to the ground, and offered his own primetime show on CNN. Good news, though, Nancy Pelosi was safe as she was wearing a bulletproof face. When reached for comment, Joe Biden said, "It's times like these that make me glad I'm already dead." Witnesses at the event had reported multiple shots. "Did someone say multiple shots?" asked one woman. Witnesses say they first heard a loud bang, but had simply assumed that Chris Christie just tried the chili. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz was not at the event, yet he still somehow fled the scene. Many guests pointed out the lax security measures at the venue in the wake of the shooting. In fact, many were shocked they would let in a deranged lunatic without any friends. But true, the shooting took place at the D.C. Hilton, the same venue where Reagan was shot. So for the rescheduled event happening in a month, organizers will look for a venue with less chance of gunfire, like Beirut. Most in the media present at the event expressed shock over the incident, although CNN's Brian Stelter wondered why couldn't they have held the assassination attempt until after dessert. To prevent people from entering dangerous parts of the building, the Secret Service closed off several areas. To ensure no one entered certain rooms, they put these on the doors. And finally, after the guests left, crews were seen packing up the ballroom, and one team of experts was called in to clean the plates. All right. So obviously Saturday night, a gunman opened fire at the White House Correspondents Association dinner. To avoid bullets, guests ducked under tables, joining Don Lemon, who was already there. But when you get shot at 3 times, respectfully, you got to wonder, why does it keep happening to you?
Respectfully, why do you think this keeps happening to you?
Well, you know, I've studied assassinations, and I must tell you, the most impactful people, the people that do the most, you take a look at the people, Abraham Lincoln, I mean, you go through the people that have gone through this where they got them, but the people that do the most, the people that make the biggest impact, they're the ones that they go after.
It's true. He's been shot at so many times, even rappers won't go near him. But Trump gave a great answer, but it's only part of the reason he was targeted. True, he's the most fearless, action-oriented president ever. And the crazy part is, Trump seems to be the least bothered by it. You talk trash about his beloved Diet Coke, and he'll pummel you with 1,000 tweets. Yet getting shot at is something he takes in stride. And there's really only one other president who lived with the constant threat of physical harm, but that was from his wife. Cute. Now compare that to Joe. In 60 years, nobody tried to off him, not even once. Do you know why? He wasn't doing anything. He had all the impact of Cousin Oliver on the Brady Bunch. And really, the only time they shoot dead people is in zombie films. Trump's different. He had no love for kicking cans down the road. The only cans he did kick were his opponents. And their response? Well, if you can't beat him, kill him. And that's the other reason. Democrats and media created the target. Trump is a Nazi, a fascist, an existential threat. I could do a montage that goes on forever, but the fact that this still has to be explained makes me angrier than Bigfoot when he's mistaken for Joy Behar. Meanwhile, Gavin links the shooting to an attack on press freedom. Hakeem and Chuck lumped this attack into a bucket of all violence. And Obama's pretending we don't know why the man did this, just like when Michelle threw away his rollerblades. But we know the violence is strictly one way. So much so, their extremists actually had to pay to create events for our extremists. And yet some leftists are claiming this was staged. This after the SPLC was exposed for staging large hate events. The irony here is thicker than Rashida Tlaib's mustache. The SPLC had to create enemies to fundraise off it. We don't have this luxury. No one from our side had to pay that teacher of the year to come after Trump. No one had to pay that trans fetish nutcase to kill Charlie. No one had to pay the Butler guy or had to pay the guy who wanted to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh or who shot Steve Scalise. Nope, Dems, you grew them, watered them, nurtured them, fertilized them in your echo chamber with your media lies and left-wing propaganda until they were ready to bear fruit. And like I always say, if Democrats aren't calling you Hitler, you're irrelevant. The proof is in the Loser's Manifesto, almost word for word what you'd hear from the mainstream left. Hell, it read like a transcript from the latest episode of The View. But you know, this might be the first assassin to be radicalized by smugness. Seriously, the shooter thought he was right on everything. And what unites all liberals is their lack of humility. They just think they're right all the time. It seems harmless and annoying at first, until their opinion becomes belief, and the belief hardens into an ideology. And if you believed you helped create that ideology, then you're more desperate to protect it. Even more, without a higher power to curb this hubris, the dogma turns deadly. After all, if you say Trump's a Nazi and you think you're always right, then why not do the right thing and kill the Nazi? And yet, in the run-up to the dinner, it was still about press freedom being under threat, thanks to the evil, vile orange man. But then reality shows up, reminding us who's really getting shot at. Sorry, guys, it's not you, it's him. Maybe ask yourselves why. Let's welcome tonight's guest. She supports charitable causes and speaks without pauses. Co-host of Outnumbered, Emily Cavagno. Unlike some Kennedys, she's got no interest in dead raccoon penises. Host of Kennedy Saves the World podcast, Kennedy. She's got great insight and bad eyesight.
Finally.
New York Times bestselling author and Fox News contributor Cat Tim. And now that he's getting older, he offers early bird beatdowns. Former NWA World Champion and host of the Planet Timer podcast, Tyrus. Emily, you were at the Correspondents' dinner, and I frankly am surprised and a little disappointed in you that you didn't shoot the attacker. Why? Aren't you the least bit curious how they didn't shoot him? Isn't that kind of weird, or is that should I not speculate?
Well, I shot him with my deadly gaze.
Oh.
I think at this point, until we see exactly what happened, we'll learn later.
Yeah.
I think you share, however, in a lot of millions of Americans' surprise at why he wasn't shot and why he's no longer with us.
Yeah. How was your meal?
I just had the salad.
You just had the salad? Was it delicious?
Yeah, it was great.
That's good.
So, look, it was after the salad that everything changed.
Yes.
Everything that you said is so correct, and I've been thinking about just in this last couple days how up until now we've been told that every threat is assessed at whether it's credible and whether it's actionable by Secret Service. And you think to yourself, oh, the teacher of the month, the guy who lives with his parents in California that everyone loves and goes to No Kings rallies and calls the president a fascist pig. No, he's fine. That's not, maybe it's actionable, but it's not credible. That's not actually a threat. And then I have realized in this that actually means that, yes, everyone is a threat. And fomented, I posit, by a lot of the people that were under the tables with us. There were 2,000 of us under the tables whose lives were in the very capable hands of the Secret Service and CAT and SWAT and all of the, CAT is the division of...
I was like, I had nothing to do with it.
Yes, sorry. Starts
Tiff
with a
was
C, not a
holding
K. But you were there in spirit with us. And I thought about how much of their words has fomented this, because you're right. This is just in the last couple months of people, of Christiane Amanpour, who called the MSG campaign rally that Trump had crystal knocked. Kamala Harris says the vice president that he's a fascist. Joy Behar, Joy Reid, half of the people that you showed and so much more, many under the table that with impunity call the president Hitler, Nazi, fascist, dehumanize him, and create the monster that they then put a target on. And then have the nerve to equate their vulnerability somehow with his, and have the nerve to somehow distance themselves from any kind of culpability whatsoever. And then they say things like, well, the right extremists, that's the real danger. When we have learned that the right extremist danger this entire time was manufactured by the left-wing extremist danger funded by SPLC. So now we are learning that the seemingly innocuous person that goes to the rally on Tuesday is actually the person that will travel across the country with a bunch of guns in the Amtrak compartment and breeze right on into the Hilton and attempt to open fire on the full cabinet and the president. And I don't know how you can separate any responsibility or accountability. As we've seen fooling around, this person was the product of the system. He's not a deviant from it.
Right. You know, Kennedy, I was just thinking, what would it been like if you had gone to the bathroom before that happened, and then you came out of the bathroom? You go in, you pee.
That's so funny.
And then you just come out and you go, what the hell just happened? What did I miss?
I did think you wouldn't be able to make this about the bathroom.
No, it just occurred
I was
to me.
wrong.
So how was it for you?
It was really scary because we were like 2 tables from the aisle where the agents came in, and they were obviously heading right toward the president, but they were right next to us. We heard the gunshots, and your brain tries to make sense of it. It's like, was that plates dropping? Were those gunshots? Maybe they were. Maybe I'm just on edge. And the second those doors opened, you knew exactly what it was.
You think they were afraid to shoot the guy?
I do. I think there are a lot of conversations about rules of engagement with federal law enforcement officers, and they don't want their lives and careers ruined. Or, maybe one of them just got a great opportunity to tackle him, and they were all very precise and responsible. The Secret Service did an incredible job. And, I want to give a special shout out to the counter-assault team that Emily was talking about. Those are the guys in the black helmets with the night vision goggles and the M4 rifles, trained on the tactical guys who make sure there's no one else coming in the door behind the shooter. And that was the big fear in the moment.
Right.
It's like, are we not done with this? And honestly, my biggest fear, other than are we not going to get the Maine lobster, was... It went through my mind. I was worried that they got the president because we didn't hear anything. All you heard was gunshots and Secret Service agents yelling at us to get down. And that was my fear in the moment. And because no one knew what was going on and we couldn't talk to each other, and I was scared to stand up and look and see what was happening. I've never felt anything like that, and that was awful.
What about the Hilton? Kat. I mean, are you ever going to feel safe in a Hilton again? That guy booked a room. Couple days. I mean, that's not like evil genius stuff.
Yeah. It's like, how did he get in?
Yeah, he just booked a room.
He booked a room.
He booked the John Hinckley suite.
Yeah, he went.
Oh, too soon. Oh, go watch Kimmel.
Yeah, seems like it was just like TripAdvisor.
Yeah. Yes.
It was really just that simple.
Yeah.
It is insane. It is insane to think about how no one is ever really safe at any time. It also is insane that this is the 3rd time something like this has happened. And I was asleep when this happened, and I woke up, and Cam told me about it, and I was like, ha ha ha, like, no way. but it really did happen. And then we talked about it for a little while, and then it was like, all right, regularly scheduled programming, because it's now the third time that something like this has happened.
It's normalized, as the left likes to say.
It's truly, and by the way, we have to save some smoke for the guy who actually did it, right? Because this is a lunatic, this is a bad person. Plenty of people hear all kinds of rhetoric and don't check into a hotel with weaponry like an absolute psycho. This guy is obviously a loser. He's obviously a piece of and hope that he gets what's coming to him.
Yeah, me too.
But also, I mean, about the rhetoric, regardless of things happening like this or not, there are damages that happen because of it every single day on a smaller scale than this, like tearing us apart from each other and refusing to see each other as human beings. I mean, the stuff that people will say about other people and not even think twice about it is truly crazy. And I don't think that it used to be like that. It is like that now. And I think that on a smaller level, every day, the more we're exposed to it, I think it does something to all of us as humans that is not good.
Yeah, I do think, though, Tyrus, that I am sensing something that no one's really talking about. People can make fun of people on the right for being religious or humorless. There are plenty of stereotypes, but there's something about the left, and that is the lack of humility. When you talk, we know it when we see a liberal acting like they're right and you're wrong. There's a sense
it's absolutism.
Yeah. And I think that when I read that guy's thing and I read his post, I go like, he sounds like all of them.
Well, he is all of them. And he's not crazy. And in circles, he's not a bad person. He's a soldier.
Yeah.
It was a call to arms.
Yeah.
And that's what the whole plan was. I mean, we need to stop. The problem, though, I say it over and over again, we're too polite. If it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, and tries to kill you, it's a duck. Like, they just...
It's a killer duck.
But you make jokes about it, but we're always, he's mentally this, he's that, this. No. What do you think the whole point of going out and saying that rhetoric? See, the thing is about the people in politics is they never want their hands dirty. So they'll say things over and over, and then you'll have these king rallies where they'll all get together and they'll preach this stuff and preach, and they believe it as much as you believe in your own lives. So he's a martyr. He's a hero. He's gonna have so many letters.
Yeah.
He's gonna have so many of those weird-looking women singing outside his cell. Like, we're laughing, but like, the one thing they haven't had in this whole thing has been military, in-shape, aged men, and now, lo and behold, they're showing up. So their work is getting better. I think, you don't need to bring this back.
Yeah.
You should never, ever have the president and the vice president in the same event again. You just can't. And to me, the most powerful thing that I saw in that whole thing going down was, here's the president knew who those shots were for, and what was his first move? His wife. That's why he's my president.
Yeah.
He was a man first, and he...
Dudes! It's about the dudes! Toxic masculinity.
But here's the thing. He made, in his speech, and the president was a little shook up because he couldn't remember names of the guys he was trying to talk about, but Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
There's people that have tried to stand to make change, and when they make change, and let's not kid ourselves. How many billions of dollars is out of the pockets of politicians right now? How many of the defund groups and all that stuff? And ironically, this is a good time to have King rallies and send people to go attack, because why? Our stuff isn't funded. So the guards are down, and you don't have to be crazy to be like, hey, it's so easy to get him, guys. All you got to do is check. The best thing that happened was those guys took his ass down, because now he's going to talk. And they're going to get more, because usually what happens is they end up with a bullet in their head, and then they say, oh, he's crazy, he's this. And we need to stop saying, like, because he's a teacher, like, that's somehow honorable. These ain't the teachers that we grew up with.
Yeah.
These are the teachers that are grooming your kids, that are rocking flags, and that are trying to have sex with your kids, who want to take parents out of the home. Let's stop. These aren't the teachers that we think they are. He is a soldier, and we need to start recognizing the fact that there is a war in this country. It's just they don't fight like us. Yeah. They fight underneath us.
All right.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.